Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. Today I'm going to be reviewing a hand that I played in a $1,500 buy-in World Series of Poker event last year. The World Series of Poker is coming up relatively shortly for this year, so I wanted to go through a few of the hands that I played last year to start thinking about how to play against some of these players who make, sometimes, very gigantic errors. So let's take a look at this hand. I have 8-6 offsuit on the button, and I remember in this particular hand, the small blind and the big blind were both incredibly tight and passive and straightforward. These are the players who are just playing straight up. They're not doing anything too creative. They're just sitting there trying to get good cards. I want to make it clear that is not typically how you win at poker. You usually win at poker by stealing pots that don't belong to you and getting full value. And if your opponents think you're tight and straightforward, you're not going to be able to get full value. And you're not going to be able to win pots that don't belong to you. So that strategy is typically quite poor. Anyway, I get 8-6 offsuit on the button. Notice the big blind only has 3,000 chips. So I make it 1,200 from the button, hopefully to make him fold almost everything. But he does decide to call. So the pot's now 3,100. And the flop comes ace-4-2. So I have nothing. And my opponent checks. So now the pot is 3,100, and my opponent only has 2,300 left. At this point, I have to figure out, will he fold any part of his range to a continuation bet? So the question becomes sort of, would he call a preflop raise with stuff like 10-9 and Jack-10 and King-7 and 6-5? Would he call with those hands, but then fold to a bet on the flop? And I think this guy probably would. So now, how much should I bet? Most players just bet 2/3 pot as a default. And notice 2/3 pot would put my opponent all in. But if you look at my hand actually has 0% equity. Not necessarily 0%, but incredibly low equity. So if I go all in and he calls, I'm just burning that money. So is there a better bet size than 2,350 to put my opponent all in? And I think in this spot, there is a better bet size. Even though I raised to 1,000 pre-flop, I think a bet of something like 1,000 on the flop will make my opponent play straightforwardly. If he has nothing, he's just going to fold. And if he has something, he's going to go all in, and I can then fold. I want to make it clear, you can put in 1,000 chips here and then fold if you get check raised. A lot of people get stuck up on the concept of being pot committed, thinking that if they have a lot of chips in the pot, they must continue. You only have to continue if you're getting the right price to call. And when you have 8-6 on ace-4-2 with 2 hearts, and you have 2 black cards in your hand, you are not pot committed. You have almost no equity. So this is a pretty sweet spot to bet 1,000. This is a scenario that does come up occasionally in small buy-in events, especially in small buy-in local events where a lot of players are very splashy pre-flop. Like, they'll just defend their big blind incredibly wide and then check fold to any bet size on the flop. And as long as you're making the same bet size with all of your hands, all of your good hands, you're going to be relatively difficult to play against. You get to make this small 1/3 pot bet as a bluff, and there's not a whole lot your opponent can do about it besides just play better hands. Of course, you don't want to be known as the guy who bets tiny whenever he's bluffing and bets big when he has a good hand. Or in this spot, you don't want to be the guy who's betting 1,000 with his bluffs and all in with his good hands. Because notice, if my opponent has anything, he's probably just going to go ahead and put his whole stack in. So in this spot, what happens? My opponent folds. And that's a great result. This is a scenario where a lot of people, they look at the guy in the big blind and think big blind has only 6 big blinds to start the hand or 7 big blinds. And they elect to just fold the 8-6 offsuit. But against a lot of the players who you will encounter in small and middle stakes games, they are not really thinking that. They're just trying to flop a good hand. And in this spot, if you have to recognize, most of the time your opponent's not going to flop a good hand when there's 1 big card and 2 little cards. You can make any bet, and they're going to fold to that bet, even if that bet is small. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to check back next week for another video here on Poker News. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter at Jonathan Little. I want to thank you for watching. Please share these videos with your friends if you enjoyed them. And I will talk to you next time.